You're listening to Zap Night, a video game review podcast, with your hosts, Danny and Kaylie. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 19 for Zap Night. I'm your host, Danny.
And I'm your co-host, Kaylie.
Kaylie! It's so nice to have you back! I love all the special guests, but it just flows a little bit easier with you around. So...
19!
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? What was the last episode you were on? Like, 16? No, I think it was less than that. So, how are things?
Pretty good. Baby's growing like a weed.
I know, he's what, 6 months old now?
He's 6 months. Yeah.
Wow.
I know, he's...
6 episodes
tall,
without you.
20-pound babies.
So, we played, the past couple months, we played Last Story.
Yeah, I love this game. We both have played this game before. We decided to.
Right, yeah. And, you know, the first time through, I don't know how long ago it was, but it definitely didn't sink in. Because I played
this is surely a game you really should play a second time.
I played it this time through, and I remember nothing of the story.
Oh, I know.
I remember nothing of the gameplay. It was like starting over from scratch.
It really was. For me, too, it's like as things happened, it was like, oh, this seems familiar. And it's like, oh, yeah. But, I mean, until it's actually legitimately happening, even after something happens, I don't remember most of it.
There was parts of the game that I legitimately was like, I don't remember this happening at all.
I am the same way.
So let's talk about the game here. It was developed by Mistwalker, and Mistwalker is founded by one of the former Final Fantasy directors, Hironobu Sakaguchi. And he was like the original director for like the first
9?
Oh, was it only?
I think so. I'm not sure.
I was thinking it was less than that, but yeah, I mean, he was like a major player in the Final Fantasy scene until fairly recently. And yeah, he split off to do his own thing. He's made a few RPGs.
I feel like that with him being a director for this is really, for me, this game, I loved this game. And I feel like because it has that Final Fantasy-esque to it, why it just resonates more with us.
It was very reminiscent of a Final Fantasy game.
Yes.
It had a lot of those Final Fantasy elements to it. And yeah, that's kind of what made it fun. That's really what drew me to it to begin with.
Right.
And between that and it being composed by...
Nobuo, yeah.
Yeah. And he composed all of the Final Fantasy music up until like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
So, I mean... You know, between those two, it really made it feel like a true Final Fantasy game. The story was well written for that same aspect, right. You know. So anyway, it was it's just a Wii game. It didn't get re-released for any other platform, and it was released in January 2011 in Japan. And then it wasn't released until August of 2012 in the US.
I got the special box.
I know, and I'm super jealous. That box was awesome.
I was ready for this game when it first came out, and it came with like an art book, and I think the music, the OST.
It was like some select
CD, yeah. But the game box is supposed to look like a storybook because, of course, it's the last story,
yeah.
and it's really cute. I really love the whole package. It was really, really nice.
I did see it when you got it, and it is really cool. I ended up finding it at a local reseller, like used game store. And luckily, they had a copy of it. I'd been looking for a copy of it for a long time.
Yeah.
I really just want your copy of it, but it's yours. But I did eventually get my own, so it's just not quite as fancy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's... Oh, one other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is the gap between the Japan release and the US release. I mean, it's over a year. January 11 to August 2012. It's like a year and a half. What's funny is the US, the North America version was released last. And it was actually released in like Europe and elsewhere.
Australia.
Like, yeah. Way before, like, within that same year.
Yes, I remember that being
So I think that's kind of weird. Like, they really didn't... It's like they just didn't want North America to have a copy, and then they're like, well, I guess.
Maybe with I don't know. I have no idea. But my speculation is maybe because they are like the characters have a European accent to
That's true,
each of them. So maybe they felt it would resonate more with over there. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe they just weren't expecting to make as good of sales, and maybe they didn't. I haven't looked into the sales aspect of it.
It was very well received from what the Wikipedia says.
Wikipedia.
And they know all, because it's online. So, you want to talk about the story?
Yeah. So, the last story, you start off as your main character, Zale, and you've got your party, which I think is funny that they started the party off, like, you have all of your party immediately. Like,
yeah,
you don't gain any or lose any.
Yep.
And so you start off with your character, Zale, and group leader, Dagrin, and your other fellow mercenaries, Seren, Marania, Yurik, and Lowell.
Yurik, ugh.
Yeah. And so you start off, you're hired by Count Argonin of this Lazarus City. And initially, they don't start off in Lazarus City. They come to Lazarus City to do this because they're mercenaries. They travel about doing all this stuff. And during this mission, they're hired to get rid of the monsters because Lazarus City has magic. And the monsters are drawn to this magic. So our job is to exterminate them, and during this time, things kind of go crazy.
I didn't get that in the story when I was playing it.
Well,
that they were drawn to the magic. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
They mention it briefly, but
maybe.
I believe Dagrin mentions it because you have like a mini flashback of taking on the job, and he says that because of this magic, the monsters are drawn towards it. So during this time, underneath the castle, there's like caves and catacombs, and it's like a labyrinth down here, and they find their way into these ruins. And in these ruins, I don't remember exactly. Do you remember what happened when? I think things just start going wrong. And
oh yeah, it's all the skeletons.
Yes.
They get stuck in a room with the skeletons that keep regenerating themselves.
And something about Seren, because Zale gets paired off with Seren, and something about Seren being, kind of beaten down, it sends him into this flashback of his past. Apparently he's got a shady past, or not a shady past, but...
It's a traumatic past.
Yes.
Because his parents were...
Well, his whole village has been
his village was attacked by... the Lazarus Knights, yeah. And so he...
Which, I'm going to talk about this later, absolutely.
Okay, alright.
So anyway, with this mark, it's called the Mark of the Outsider, and it apparently resonates with Zale's, his sorrow, his loneliness, and it grants him this power on his arm.
The magic within the Lazarus Island
is the Outsider.
Grants him this power that they call the Mark of the Outsider, which kind of is confusing at first, but you start to get the gist of it as the story goes on.
So, with this power, the team finishes up everything, and it's suspicious, but they make their way back to town. And when they come back to town, they end up bumping into this lady, Lisa, who we later find out is actually Lazarus City's... Yeah, Lady Callista, who is Lazarus City's... The Count Argonin is... the ruler over Lazarus City, would you say?
Yeah, he's like the king of the small kingdom of Lazarus Island.
And it's his niece. For some reason, I always thought it was his daughter, but they specifically say it's his niece the entire time. So anyway, they bump into her, and, they kind of part ways, but she's escaping the castle because she really doesn't get a chance to get out. Well, after they've parted ways, the team gets a new job from the Count, and he is going to have this ball for Lady Callista because she's supposed to be married off to Geralt.
Lord Geralt.
And he is pretty boy, man. He is pretty awesome.
I don't know.
He wears way too much makeup.
He's the kind of guy that you don't like right out of the gate. Like, they designed his character so that as soon as you see him, you're like, ugh.
So, during this, they're supposed to be just doing guard duty. Like, it's a big deal. They want some guards. They find Lady Callista, of course, and they're not from Lazarus, so they had no idea until they finally see her. And an attack happens. And I think what's funny is the attack that happens is from the Garak, and they don't really explain
why they're attacking.
And like even
they do later though. You know that, right?
They do later,
Okay.
yes. But my thing is like they didn't explain. Like you just assume, like the world is, that everyone is human. Like you think they would explain like, well, there's the Garak, and then you've got monsters called reptids, and you've got the humans. No, it's just well, by the way, there's these people called the Garak.
Garak attack.
The Garak attack. I've been saying that all, by the way. So with this Garak attack, you come across the king, which his name is Zangarak, which in hindsight is not very original.
No, it's not at all. Zangarak of the Garak attack.
Zangarak attack.
Yes.
Say that 7 times fast. So anyway, he learns that Zale has the power of the outsider. Like his main goal is, I think he initially intends to abduct Lady Callista, and they do prevent him from doing this. However, he pretty much is like, you're preparing for war. Like, this is a big deal. So, in retaliation, Lazarus Island, they've got these cannons. They have a big cannon, but they have all these different mini cannons. And they use the power of the outsider to attack. Like, they've got this huge force. Well, they fire their cannons, and the party is, like, in the middle of this. So they, as a last...
To escape the cannon fire, they board the Garak ship.
Right. So it takes various trials and errors and battles, and they eventually fight their way through... They end up on the Garak Island, don't they?
Yeah, they go to the Garak Island, and they meet up with the general. What was the general's name?
General Asthar.
No. Well, yeah, they did meet up with him and the other guy, too. The other pretty
Therius.
boy. Yeah, Therius.
Sir Therius.
And, when they meet up with them, again, it kind of goes back to why were they there? Like, I don't really know. They didn't explain why they were there.
I think
it was like...
I think the intent was a counterattack. But Callista goes with you.
Right.
They're trying to get Callista back, I believe.
Oh, that might be it. That might be the whole
because
reason.
After the party finally makes their way back to Lazarus, Zale is and the party is thrown right into jail, and
all because of Jarell.
Of Jarell, who is accusing them of abducting her.
Right.
And they really have to fight for their innocence, basically. And
mainly Zale.
But which it's funny because the way they proved their innocence, Dagran was never accused of this. And I don't know if Dagran went with you. I don't think he did. No, he might have.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was there.
So what is funny is Dagran was never never put into jail.
Now, sorry to stop your story here, but I wanted to talk about this part because Zale is given the opportunity to defend himself. Jarell's argument is that Zale abducted Lady Callista and went off to war to fight the Garak. However, Zale has the defense of she was abducted by the Garak, and they boarded the ship, and they took him to the island anyway. So, I mean,
why didn't they
instead, he just stays silent. Like, the whole time, he doesn't say anything except, I don't know, like, no, that's not true, but doesn't defend himself.
I think what you're saying is a good argument. I would have just said the Garak abducted her and we went to find her. But because Callista she asked to go, they don't want to tell the Count that Callista wanted to go herself. I think that was the whole thing.
Maybe, but my problem is in the writing. That you're probably right, but my problem is in the writing. Because what they do is they just say, you did all these horrible things to Zale, and Zale's like, no, that's not true, but doesn't defend himself.
Right.
He doesn't say anything in retaliation. He just says, no, that's not how it was.
Guess
and
I'm
then just leaves it. So it was a very awkward moment in the game.
There is a couple moments through the game though that is kind of like that. It's just kind of to make the story flow.
Yeah, it's like you don't really understand it, but the characters are okay with it, so we move on.
Well, in any case, Dagran, who is not, by the way, being accused, he brings up the fact that Zale has this mark on his hand. And that intrigues the Count because it's the mark of the outsider. And apparently this has been prophesized about. They don't even talk about that, by the way, and I feel like it should have been talked about.
They talked about it a little bit. Yeah, I think they had like it's part of the prophecy, but it kind of sounded like when Zale was being questioned, the Count went to the judge and was like, "It's part of the prophecy. You know, you all know the prophecy, and this is the man. Show him your power." Yeah. And then they just let him go. To me, it almost sounded like they made up this prophecy on the fly, and I kind of thought that that's where they were going with it. But no, it's like, oh yeah, no, there really was this prophecy that just happened to conveniently come up while he was in jail.
Regardless, this intrigues the Count. They are cleared of their name. Mm-hmm. And basically the Count tells him if he swears loyalty to him, he has the prospects of not only becoming a knight, which is what Zale and Dagran really are searching out to be, to better their lives, but he has the prospect of marrying Lady Callista, who at this point he has finally had a nice connection with her.
He's falling in love with her, really. And really she is too.
On the Count's request, they reach what's called the Realm of Ascendancy. And Zale goes there and he hears cries calling out to him. And
hang on. So we need to describe this Realm of Ascendancy thing. Because of Zale having this mark of the outsider, he has to prove his loyalty to the Count. And the only way to do that is to activate the island.
Which is actually a fortress.
Which is actually...
moving fortress.
Yes. And the only way to do that is to go to this Realm of Ascendancy. So basically the Count, pushes Zale into the realm and says, "Good luck, buddy."
By the way, do this. Which, by the way, I'm sorry, but it's absurd. A moving island.
I kind of felt like...
really?
We've done this before in Final Fantasy VIII. When your garden is a moving
I don't know, the garden is more believable than an island.
I agree. It was a bit of a stretch, but it's okay, whatever. We go along with it.
Well, of course, the island is now not stationary anymore, so it can freely move about. With this, the island is on its way to the Garak city because they're about to have a counterattack on them. And... unfortunately, the Garak beat them to it. They do another ambush on Lazarus City. And the Count, he wants you to go defend the cannon. So you escort him and the Count all the way to the cannon. And unfortunately, during this time, you get separated from almost everyone. And you come across General Aslar, who he has a mini major role in this game. But he ends up being murdered. And you don't know who has murdered him, but unfortunately you once again are being framed for this, and you are tossed into jail. Somehow they have fought, they're off this attack again, Lazarus City.
Well, the Garak just vanish again.
Right.
And, Jarrell throws Zale back in jail because Jarrell thinks that Zale killed General Astar.
So, you are in jail, but with the help of Callista... Zale has escaped and has returned to the city where he meets up with his friends. And they figure out a way to help basically clear his name, with the help of Dagran again, mind you.
Yeah, Dagran decides to sneak into the castle and search Jarrell's room.
Right.
And that's where they find some sort of documentation between the Garak and Jarrell.
So... with this in mind, Jarrell is thrown into jail. And this is when Lazarus starts their counterattack. And they attack the city of the Garak. And unfortunately for the Garak, of course, when they get there, it's all civilians. All of the army and stuff, they're not there.
There's no defense on the Garak Island.
And so, the Knights of Lazarus, they're pretty merciless when it comes to this. They're enjoying this. It's
just a raid.
It really is. And, Zale really finds himself, he's questioning all of this stuff, which I have a problem with this because both Zale and Dagran's goals are to become knights. And at least for Zale, he's questioning, these knights aren't good.
Yeah.
They've killed my people, and at one point, why is it taking him this long to figure this out? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if he really knows that it's the Lazarus people that attacked his village.
But I think he does, and I realize this is a bit ahead, but Dagran eventually reveals that he knows it was the Lazarus Knights, and I really feel like at one point that would be talked up between Dagran and Zale.
Yeah, you would think, yeah.
So to me, it's kind of sloppy, and I feel like this is something that, like, it's, by this point, it's well into the game. Like, why is this just now being brought up, and why is this just now an issue?
Right.
But I digress. We'll talk about that later. So after this attack, there's more questions raised than answered. Answered questions and all that. So they return, and Zale is really finding himself conflicted over really what he wants, and everyone's really trying to tell him, you need to pull it together and figure out what you want,
because he's offered the knighthood.
Right. The knighthood, I mean, it's...
in Lazarus Island by the Count. And so his options really at this point are to stay a mercenary and kind of
live this life that, they've been trying to build themselves a better life.
But not only does it affect Zale, but all of his mercenary friends. Yes. So, I mean, not only does he remove himself from being a knight, he also prevents the rest of them from being a knight too. So, he really is conflicted about becoming a knight because of his morals and, not becoming a knight and ending up, destroying the rest of his friends' lives. So that's where he's trying to figure out what the best thing to do is.
So while he's thinking about all of this, he's in the castle thinking about this. Like, he's strictly thinking about this. And he hears a voice, and it's singing. So he's drawn to this voice. So no one else in the area that he can see can hear this voice. So he goes looking for it. And he ends up meeting up with both Callista and Therius. And they go through, I don't know if it's also the Realm of Ascendancy or if it's just something similar.
It was pretty much the same place. But why was Therius there? I didn't understand that either. He was just like, hey, I'm here too. Maybe he just was following it with Callista. I don't know. It could be.
So how Therius gets there, I don't really understand either. I didn't even think about it.
He's just there.
They make their way through this, and they meet up with the sorceress. The sorceress tells them about the outsider, and she explains that the outsider, it was actually a world seed. And this world seed was basically wandering through space and time, kind of absorbing energy as it went. And it created worlds as it was doing this. But she had summoned the outsider to help her lover, who was an Argonan ancestor. She called on it so that it would help him end an ancient war. It's been a war that's been going on for a long time.
Between the Garak and the humans.
Right. Which, again, has not been talked about at all up until this point. I know. After calling on it, they succeed in ending, I believe they succeed in ending the war. However, they realize quickly that the outsider, because it absorbs energy, it starts pulling on the energy in the area, and the land starts dying at an alarming rate. So, as a means of, trying to slow the process, they split the outsider in half. And they don't really explain how one half of the outsider ends up with the Garak, but they have the other outsider there. And that's kind of it. She, the sorceress explains that, you really need to reunite these two so that it can go back to where it came from, and the land will start, it'll stop killing the land, because that's really the biggest problem with this whole thing is the Garak land is dying, your land is dying, and surrounding islands are dying.
Well, the whole world is dying, and that's really that's kind of Mirania's side plot, is that her whole problem is that the land is decaying.
Right.
And so, yeah, if they don't do this, they're going to lose the world. The whole world is going to end up in ruin, regardless of the war.
Right.
If they don't collect the two sides of the outsider and get it back to where it belongs, it's going to destroy everything that they have.
So, the sorceress just kind of dissipates after this. I don't know if she's supposed to be a ghost or what, or if she's...
I think just like the chapter ends.
Sure.
And then you're back at you're sitting on your bed or
Which
whatever.
is something I would also like to discuss later on as far as the narration goes.
Yeah.
However, they realize that the Count Argonon is very much aware of what the outsider is doing. It's killing the land, it's causing more strife, and he really is using the outsider as a means for his own gain of power, and that of course does not sit well with anyone. So Zale is unable to swear his loyalty to him, and he decides to escape with Callista to destroy the Lazarus cannon at this point. And so they run up to the turret control room. However, before they can even do anything, the Garak, out of nowhere, with their own floating island, just rams into your island.
Right. And this is kind of where it's revealed that... And this is revealed by the narration, not by any of the party members. But that the Garak, every single attack that the Garak has been doing, which is a tongue twister in itself... they have been gathering knowledge, and that's why they attack so many times, is that they're gathering the knowledge of the outsider and stealing these books so that they can learn how to build and control their half of the outsider. And that's what they've done with this island. They've figured this out, they've been able to build this island in a very short amount of time.
Right.
And harness that energy and attack back. With the Garak attack boat.
The Garak attack. So during this attack, they need to go find the outsider. So with Count Argonon, you go down and you reach the outsider, that you're half of the outsider. And Count Argonon provokes this, and
they're trying to pull more energy out of their half of the outsider to be able to attack the Garak's outsider.
Which, it's funny because Count Argonon is attacking this to really get it to wake up, to do its job. And it does. It pulls the energy. Unfortunately, this kills the island.
Yes.
It uses up what little energy is left, because it's been draining it this whole time. And its powers are, it's insufficient to attacking back the Garak. And it ultimately kills Count Argonon. Like, I don't know what happens. It's just all of a sudden he disappears. I don't know if he just got absorbed.
I think it used his energy to summon that monster.
He gets pretty power hungry near the end. He's like reaching for it, talking,
it's kind of a dramatic scene.
But, with the Garak Fortress, it rams into Lazarus Island. And the Garak just from there proceeds to just completely take over.
Right.
So... the refugees are hiding underground. The Garak, you're fighting.
The island refugees, civilians.
Everyone's fighting, but eventually they all regroup underneath the city. And your team decides that they need to find the Garak's half of the outsider. And they actually do succeed after, it's a long dungeon.
Quite a few chapters there.
But the team finally reaches it, and... they do succeed in removing it to make the fortress pretty much collapse.
I'd like to note here that right after Zale denounces his loyalty...
Dagran's just gone.
And he's gone between now and the end of the game. This main character just disappears and no one questions it.
Interesting enough, before Zale actually says that he's going to not accept the knighthood, Dagran confronts him and is just like, you can't do this to all of us. And Zale tells him, I'm sorry, but I have to do what's right. And Dagran kind of comes off as the bad guy all of a sudden, and he's like, you're gonna have to fight me to go through it. And
doesn't he,
I believe he pulls out his weapon, but Zale calls his bluff on it.
Doesn't he even say that he planted the thing,
he does acknowledge that he did, but he tells him that he's doing it so that it's for the good of everyone, yes.
Yeah, bettering all the mercenary group. So, Dagran's doing this so that everyone can become a knight, not just Zale.
So, with this fortress collapsing, they then pursue Zangarak. He, at this point, has kidnapped Callista. he's used her blood to invoke on his arm
to give him the same outsider power as
Zale. And that really starts in on the the various forms of the end boss game and all that. And after you finally beat Zangarak, he rips off his arm thinking it will revive him because it has the outsider power on it. And it does this little creepy crawl, and you come face to face with Dagran, who has been missing up until this point.
Right, yeah, which has been like 10 chapters at least.
And he takes the arm, and he basically takes on the power himself.
Does he eat it? What does he do?
I don't know what he does. Maybe he eats it.
I just accept it.
It is what it is. You start off with regular Dagran. The power becomes too much. It's not even Dagran at that point that you're battling. You're battling some...
Well, you have to take what Dagran says here. So, Dagran's whole backstory, as bad guys do in these games, they reveal the whole plot for some reason.
But you know what? In defense, Dagran owes them an explanation. Not like a random bad guy explaining. This is legit, at least called for in this scenario.
What's going on is that Dagran, a lot like Zale, his hometown was destroyed. Dagran finds out that the people who destroyed his hometown and murdered his family was the Lazarus Island Knights. And, the Count and the General Astar, everybody. They were all involved. And so he really was focusing on revenge from early childhood. Right. And it really turns all of his comrades into pawns. And they literally say that in the game.
Right.
It kind of spirals out of control for Dagran, I think, into a power-hungry, revenge, angry person. But he never really talks about it. And after you beat Dagran and you kind of do some of the end sequences, you talk with Lowell a little bit about how, Lowell says Dagran was messed up, but how messed up are we to not have seen that, thinking that they were his friends. So, you're seeing that, Dagran was still a big part of their life because he was their leader for so long, but yet he had all this built up anger and,
and no one really noticed.
No one noticed, yeah. And so, there is a bit of that struggle, but when it comes down to I don't know if you have any more, if you want me to just continue
no,
with the
go
end
ahead.
stuff.
Go ahead.
They make it to Dagran's grave, and they wish him a farewell. Zale and Callista, they get married, and Callista grants Zale the knighthood.
More importantly, too, the Garak and the humans are now living together.
Oh, yeah. So after Zangarak dies, they merge the two the two species together, and they live as one. Because really, when it comes down to it, is people are people regardless of what race you are. So, I guess maybe that was their message. I don't know. Anyway,
stop being racist.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the story.
Yeah. There's a couple plot holes, but
from our end, I mean, we left out a few things just to keep it under an hour. So let's talk about the story. Even though we just got done talking about the story.
What did you give it?
I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a little bit high, and I acknowledge that. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 7 out of 10. A good point of this, there's a lot to it. I feel like while there was a few points, it was like, I don't think this was well thought out. It really was, it was a lot to it. It was a story.
When I played this the first time through, I really felt like it was a straightforward game, and it was very it seemed just like a normal Final Fantasy game. Like, you save the princess and, you become a knight sort of thing. But playing it a second time through, I have a very different opinion about it. It's way more deep than just getting the girl. It's about the decaying land, and it's about finding out where your loyalties stand regardless of what your end desires are.
Sure.
So, like, Zale, the whole time through, he wants to be a knight. And he's given that opportunity, yet he sees what the consequences are going to be. And so he goes against what his dreams are to follow what he believes is true. And I mean, I don't know, there's so much more than just that, but I mean, that's a good part to what this story is really telling. There's so many different things going on here than just going and getting the girl. And I appreciated that.
I wholeheartedly agree. I really don't have a whole lot to say about the good of the story. You really do shell it out, because it's just so complex, and it really is good. But I have a tiny bit of problems, not really with the story, but the details of the story. One of the things... I've got a lot to say about this part. One of the things is the narration of the story. You have a narrator, and that's fine. I thought it was
They
unique.
wanted to play it out like you're reading a book.
However, it almost comes across lazy. It's all of a sudden you're here. They made their way back after doing... Like, wait, why can't we make our way back as we do it? He just ends the scene right then and there, and I don't feel like it's enough. I feel like it's just lazy and sloppy.
Really?
Yeah.
There's
no transition from one part to the other. It's just, here's the end. They made it their way back safely.
I understand what you're saying. I disagree, though. I think that's a great segue. Maybe it's the laziness in me, and that might be 100% of it, but I don't want to walk all the way back. No. I don't want to sit and watch the boat trip, I don't know, I kind of like you beat the boss, the story ends, you're back at home.
There were certain parts where it was acceptable, but there was a few, major points in the game where it was, do we really need the narrator to explain how we made it from point A to point C?
Right.
Not all the time, but there were a couple times where it came across sloppy to me.
Sure.
The other thing was character development, and this is kind of multi-parted. It's just kind of meh. You really, you learn about a little bit about, a tiny bit about Mirania. You hear a tiny bit about Seren.
I guess.
Yurik. But, for one thing...
You don't get a whole lot of backstory.
The closest backstory you get is about Yurik.
I know.
And they don't explain how the rock gets into his eyeball.
I know!
He just has a rock in his eyeball, and that's how it is.
And what? He's, super powerful because of that? I know. I know.
The other thing is... This is a minor thing, it really isn't a big deal, but there's a point where when you're arrested one of the many times, and there's a dungeon part where you go through kind of seeking a way out, through the catacombs and stuff.
Horus.
And yes, and you go with Seren. And Seren, who has this loud personality, she's kind of the drunk of the group, she's loud and boisterous, but she has a very loud personality. And through this dungeon crawl, you literally don't hear anything from her.
She's might have just there to help.
But they could have taken anyone else. Why Seren? She didn't even say anything on the side. I mean, she might have a tiny bit, but there's nothing. She wasn't making fun of anyone or anything.
I think that sometimes in some of these extra dungeons, I felt like they were partnering up you with certain people because of their abilities.
Which would be fine if this was an optional dungeon, but it wasn't. And that was my other point. It was not optional. You had to do this. And so, if you're going to send someone who has no commentary, why would it be Seren?
I don't know.
Or if not, just pull some other dialogue that she has said from before. It was just, she was so radio silent compared to how she is normally.
Yeah.
Any other dungeon you went with her, she had something to say, but not this one. But I digress. The other characters, there really wasn't... Lowell, you don't know anything about Lowell.
I am not changing the topic, but I'm segueing here into... I really liked the character development.
Oh, I did too. I just wish they'd shelled it out more.
There's definitely no back history behind a lot of them. Like you said, Yurik is there. I hated Yurik from the beginning.
I did too.
I didn't like his backstory at all. I thought he was just this depressed kid and
emo guy.
Yeah, and I didn't like that. Aside from that, the stories that they did tell were pretty good. Mirania with her hunting down
forest and all this.
where her backstory is something about living in a forest and she was raised by a forest spirit.
Right.
I want to know more about that. I
Right.
want more backstory behind that. But you get what you get, and I liked it. I liked hearing about it, and I liked the one little dungeon where she kind of explains it.
I will admit, for the story, they did amazing for the characters. As much as I didn't like Yurik, he still fit. He still fit.
I liked having somebody to hate.
Yeah,
I like somebody to throw bananas at. Too many times it happened.
It's just, I guess because I want more out of the story. That's what I look for in an RPG as a story. And I really, because of how much I liked the characters, I wanted more from the characters, not just, by the way, there's a rock in my eye.
Yeah.
They don't explain where he got it, the whole like that. And, realistically, that could have been a completely different game or story or chapter itself. I mean, the game was long. So I understand if it's time or something, but it wasn't enough for me. I just wanted to know more about these people. Who was your favorite character?
Mirania.
Was she really?
Hands down, yep. I liked her from the beginning. She was very mysterious, and I liked her voice.
I couldn't do her bangs. I
kind of liked that, and she matched Zale really well with the feathers in her hair.
Oh, I see.
I don't know. I thought she was cool.
I had a hard time picking my favorite. I naturally gravitate towards the main characters like Zale, but he was almost too good for me. I really liked Dagran, and I really liked Lowell, but I also kind of like characters like Lowell. The womanizer type. I think those kinds of characters are funny.
I really enjoyed the dynamic between Lowell and Seren. I really liked that they bickered and argued, but they really liked each other a lot. And I loved that. It was so great.
I have a problem with that too. I didn't write it down, but I would like to talk about that too. To me, I understood that they were bickering because they kind of liked one another, but the bickering was almost too strong. I did not make the connection they were kind of flirting with each other near the end, and it seemed so strong at the end. It was just too much. Like, all of a sudden now they like each other? I don't know.
I think that it was a development.
I'm sure it was.
It was something that they were... At the beginning, they were just friends, and Lowell was out doing his, womanizing, and Seren was doing her drinking, and over the course of the game, they grew to love one another.
I just don't feel it, though. And I could be the only one.
I don't know.
I did not feel it. It seemed like by the end of the game, they were in love with each other. It's like, wait a minute, what? And it was cheesy.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely,
it was too much Gouda.
Aside from that, I liked the comedy that they brought.
Yes, that really did help too.
It made the game a little bit easier. I did
laughed
too.
A couple times. It was pretty good. The crotch shot was a good. They've got one of those in there near the end for kind of a comedic relief, if you will.
Now something else I want to talk about, which might be more gameplay. I don't really know where to put this, but it drove me bananas.
Bananas?
I really am trying not to curse because there are curse words that I want to put in here. But I was so furious every time that they would cut dialogue off while you're walking.
I have that in my gameplay notes as well.
Every single time you're going from point A to point B and there's a cutscene in the middle. When you hit to that section where the cutscene's at, if there's dialogue going on,
it's done.
Boom,
I know.
Done.
Either the dialogue's too long, or they need to have a doorway or something to make you think maybe after I pass through this doorway, it will continue.
There were times that I knew it was going to happen, so I would stop and wait for the dialogue because I legitimately want to listen to the dialogue. And yeah, you walk through a doorway or you just get to an area and it's like cut off. Like,
yes,
so many times I was yelling at my screen because they would cut the dialogue off. And it's not fair. I was so angry because all I want to do is enjoy the commentary that's going on.
I have that in my gameplay. Exactly.
It's like it is kind of gameplay, but it's kind of story because they're cutting your story off. I liked they told a lot of the story in the gameplay.
Right.
When you're just doing your normal running through a dungeon, and they would sit and kind of chit-chat amongst themselves, and that was fun. Sometimes it kind of got a little distracting when you're trying to fight and they're still talking. I didn't like that. What was with all the stuff post-boss? All the epilogue episodes, I didn't like that.
I didn't like it either. It was like, it almost made the ending anticlimactic.
It did. That's exactly what it was.
It
was
really
like,
should have been, it's like they wanted to toss more battles in there. I was like, why can't we just do the marriage and the funeral all in that ending?
In like an ending cutscene.
Why can't we narrate a segue into it?
No, you gotta have separate chapters for that.
And by the way, the chapter system is dumb because some of those chapters are optional, so you can go from chapter, for example, 62 to 68. What happened between the chapters in between?
I wondered about that, and I never really noticed it happening, but I wondered if that would be the case, because I think there's a few of those optional ones in there.
Yes.
And if you miss them, you're done. You don't get a choice.
I did not do, one or two chapters that were optional. I did a couple.
I did everything that was obvious. Yeah. I did all the chapters that was brought to my attention. If I had to hunt them down, I didn't know they were there, so... I'm sure that there's chapters that I missed, but I feel like I got the majority of the game. The end stuff really bothered me because
I agree.
after you fight the final boss, I feel like there's no reason to go into another dungeon. Maybe that's just me, but I think after you're done with the final boss, I drop my controller and I'm like, I'm done. I did it. I beat the game,
I also want to talk, this kind of might fall under gameplay too, but there's two chapters at the end of the game. I accidentally did the very last chapter instead of the other one.
Oh, so you didn't get to do the marriage one?
I saved my game.
Oh.
And I could not go back out of that dungeon, so I couldn't do the other part.
That's too bad.
And I had done that on a different time. In fact, it was before the battle with, I believe, Zangarak. One of the battles with Zangarak. In fact, it was Zangarak. Before I had beat him, I had saved it. Well, you don't have your party right before the battle. Well, I wanted to level up Surin some more. And I couldn't. I couldn't go back. There was no circles. I couldn't get to Horus to get any extra weapons. I was stuck there. I either beat him or I was screwed. Because the only person you can fight with is Zale, and then you segue right into the next battle. There's no in between. Yeah. And it did cause some problems when I was playing the game, because I had played for a good 2 or 3 hours and then went into that battle. And I was tired, I was kind of disorganized fighting him, and when I played again the next time, I did it much better, and the game went from there. But it made me think, if I was underleveled, what would I have done?
Well, going back to the story, the end stuff was frustrating. The dungeon that you missed, you didn't miss much. Yeah, I don't know if you remember what you missed.
I don't.
Basically, you go with Callista, just Zale and Callista, to Callista's family courtyard. That is what I
did.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah.
That's not the end.
There was another one. Yes, it is.
Oh, there was another one?
Yeah.
Other than that? Oh. Because that's a whole separate one. You don't actually do the end... You don't get to the end credits until after you do the thing with Lowell.
I don't know.
Did you do the thing with Lowell?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You meet Lowell, and he takes you to Dagran's grave.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe then
That's the only two that I came across.
I guess I thought it just kind of segued into that maybe
So I did the dungeon with Callista, and they got married, kinda. And then you did the thing with Lowell, and that was it.
I guess I thought Lowell was part of that, I didn't have an option to really... I guess I didn't think about it. Maybe I could then segue into the other one.
Yeah, because there's... right after you're done with...
You're probably
right. After you're done with Callista, you can walk around and do whatever you want.
You're probably right. I had done this. This was a good solid 3 hours.
Sure,
I probably, by then, I was done. I didn't think much about it.
I was done, too. Yeah. After I beat the boss, I'm like, okay, where's the credits?
Yeah.
What do I have to do to get to the credits? And I hated the dungeon with just Callista. It was way over-leveled. And the boss fight was torturous.
Spiders.
Yeah, I hated the spiders.
Which we should segue into graphics.
All right,
because we can talk about the ununiqueness of the enemies and their reusing.
Agreed.
And just palette swapping.
Mm-hmm.
They use the same abilities.
I know.
The same everything. They reuse so many enemies and bosses. This was like the third or fourth spider, wasn't it?
Yeah, and really, there wasn't that many enemies to begin with. There was the Zangrak, or there was the Grak.
Yeah, there
was the Reptards and
the Reptards.
The Reptards.
Reptar.
And then like the small little enemies, and that was it. And then the Reptards, you had just like the blue ones. It was like, I don't know.
They had different ones.
Then they had the spider boss. They did have a bunch of like unique bosses, which were kind of cool. Some of them they like to repeat, like the
vampire.
The
one.
vampire like crypt boss,
Yeah.
and the spider boss was one that they like to reuse a lot. The spider fight, it was pretty much the same every time, and just as annoying every single time.
You know, this last spider fight, though, I felt like because it ate you, you could fight from inside. It made things so much more easier. You didn't know that?
It never ate me. It only ate Callista, yeah.
Oh, well, I got it to eat me. It took a while to get it to eat me, but...
The only way I could beat it was by parrying.
Oh, yeah.
That was the only way I could beat it.
There's a couple monsters you have to parry
That was the only way I could do it. But otherwise, I mean... Alright, let's stick to graphics here.
That was graphics, unfortunately. There's reusing a lot of stuff.
They did reuse a lot.
I would like to talk about the circles. The circles, which I realize kind of falls under gameplay, but because there were so many, it lagged the game terribly. So they would put circles on your party casts magic. It lands a circle on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So there'd be circles on top of circles at one point, and the game is just frame.
If that is part of the graphics, if we're going to talk about that for the graphics, my game was super laggy a lot of the time. And it really made me upset. I was really hoping that maybe switching to the Wii U, it would be a little bit better. Right. And you were playing on the Wii U, weren't you? And it wasn't any better.
For me,
maybe it was a little bit better than mine.
I noticed in the very beginning it was bad. It got a little better, but almost all of my fights, if there was more than like 2 or 3 circles down, the game battle, it was so painfully slow.
With my headphones in, the distraction wasn't too bad, but without headphones, my Wii was spazzing out.
I did have that on occasion.
Every time there was a cutscene, every time there was a boss fight, it was like... I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if you can hear it in the streams that I have, but there was some... Like, the end, the final boss, I can't even imagine how crazy it was going for that. But otherwise, the graphics overall were pretty good.
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 7.
I gave it a 7 as well.
I think that it would do awesome with an HD remake.
Yeah.
I think that the graphics on the Wii just weren't quite where they needed to be awesome, but they were right on the verge of being awesome. So I think maybe if they were to do it like a generation later on the Wii U, it would have been a lot better. Maybe if they were to remake it, HD it for the Switch or for the PS4 or something, it would be amazing. But if they were going to do that, they have to overhaul a couple other things.
What I really, really liked was there wasn't a whole lot, there wasn't an abundance of options, but you could change your armor, the look of what your characters were wearing, like clothes. You could remove parts of the clothes and change the colors of individual parts of the clothes. I really liked that customability for each of your characters.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool. My character, I took a picture for you to see, but mine were so vastly different from yours. It was weird seeing your Dagran or your, Sarin or Zale. It was so different from mine.
That was actually kind of distracting for me.
Was it really?
Because I would get clothes that I was not happy with, and I would have to go in and customize it until I was happy with it.
I did.
So if I did like an auto auto equip on all of my characters,
Yeah,
I would have to go through all my characters and be like, nope, you can't have that. I don't like that. Nope.
I think that's. I should probably mention I played New Game Plus.
Right.
And so my characters, for the most part, have their armor already. I knew what I wanted them to have. I leveled it up so they were sufficiently equipped, and so they looked the way I wanted them to. I think I changed Dagrin in my last gameplay, the way he looked, only because him and Seren were legitimately wearing the same thing.
Yeah,
the same
I had
colors.
that a few times.
But that was really it.
Actually, my end where Zale's getting knighted, in the background you can see all the rest of the guys, and they're all wearing the same pants.
Same thing, yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all wearing the same pants.
You know, at one point, Dagrin approaches the group, my Dagrin, obviously, and I wasn't sure if it was Seren or not. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And it does, I guess I can get why it pulls, but I really liked that aspect.
That's all it was. It's just, you go through, like, right before a boss fight, they're coming.
Right.
You get the summon circle, you're like, okay, there's a boss fight up ahead, you do the auto-equip, and you go into the boss fight, and you're like, crap, I don't know who's who, because they're all wearing the same thing. Not that it really matters, it's just kind of, it tugs at your attention a little bit. So, otherwise, the graphics were okay, they were pretty good for its time. I mean, 2011, 2012, not bad.
I had only a few problems as far as the specific graphics went. There was 3 things. One of the things, which I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but the treasure chests were almost too hidden.
They were very hidden, yeah.
They blended too much in with the background.
It kind of made me feel good, though, when I found it.
Yeah, and then there was a couple, though, that was, like, so obviously there, but...
Yeah.
But then, my other 2 are doors and walls. Some doors looked like walls, and some walls looked like doors, and it was so frustrating. I would be in a dungeon, and my husband would be playing with me, and he'd be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can't find the door.
Yep. A lot of times, you could tell because all the characters were, like...
right there.
Waiting for you to open the door, like they do. And other times, it's like, yeah, you're walking around a room like, I don't know what I'm doing. And you're, like, looking at all the doors, hoping one of them is an actual door, not a wall, or something.
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely felt that.
My only other complaint is the lip syncing was so bad. It was so bad.
It was not good, but it didn't bother me a whole lot.
It bothered me. It was more bad in the beginning of the game, but it reminded me of 15, how bad the lips... or maybe it was Kingsglaive.
Kingsglaive was pretty bad.
Just the beginning. I don't know if it's just I got used to it or what, but I thought it was terrible.
I think the problem with that is more that the graphics weren't really there yet to be able to do that. Like, the PS2 could do it pretty well, but the Wii just couldn't. It was like, it just wasn't quite there yet. But yeah, I guess it was there. I just didn't... None of the cutscenes were like rendered cutscenes. They were all in-game cutscenes. Even the end was mostly, built-in cutscenes, which bothered me also because during the cutscenes there were some scenes that it would have been more appropriate for me to dress up Zale in fine armor.
Yeah.
And here he is in like gross clothes and like not wearing a shirt or something stupid, and he's being knighted. And I'm like, why? Why didn't they just give him a nice suit of armor?
Right, I
or
agree.
Formal clothes that they'd switch him to?
My Zale legitimately looks like a knight, the way he is dressed. However, I had Dagrin running around without a shirt on. But I felt like it really kind of fit Dagrin's appearance, which again, it's to
and that's
everyone's.
fine, but there are certain cutscenes that it would have been really easy to just change their outfit to be...
Well, they do it in the very beginning. Your team,
I didn't notice that.
Your team in the very beginning, which it probably is different because I played New Game Plus, but in the very beginning, my team is dressed up as how they were when I last played, and they have a cutscene to the very beginning of them accepting this job, and they're wearing their old clothes, completely different set of clothes, and I noticed because again it was so drastically different than what I had equipped.
I didn't notice that, but every cutscene afterwards, they're wearing the clothes that you have equipped, which is kind of neat.
It's a good point, yes.
But it's kind of frustrating when, again, going back to the very end, where you're being knighted and he's wearing like scrubs. It's stupid.
His booty shorts.
Yeah, exactly. Hot pink booty shorts. All right, we've talked enough.
No, we have not talked enough. We are segueing into gameplay, and my notes for gameplay are long.
Man, we're gonna have to make this a part 2, Kaylie. Jeez. Kidding. I'm not. Alright, so gameplay. You want to give me a score first so I know what we're dealing with here?
I gave it a 4 out of 10, and it initially started at a 3.
So you added an extra point?
I added an extra point.
Just like, I guess it's not that bad.
That's kind of where it was. Okay. Initially, after I got used to my controls, it was not bad. I could use it.
Okay.
I could work with it.
All right, I gave it a 6. Wanted to say that out of the gate.
A talk.
Okay. First off, let's talk about controller setup, because there's a couple different ways you can play this game. I played with the Wii Classic controller.
I did not.
What did you play with? The nunchuck?
The nunchuck, yes. And that's because initially that's what I played with.
The first time through.
Yes. And the classic controller is much too small for me, I feel like. But I didn't like the button setup.
I didn't understand the button setup, but when you came onto that stream and I started playing with the buttons and understood that there was things that I needed to do that I didn't know how to do, once I learned that, it became a lot easier.
Right. I think it's really just a matter of figuring out.
You just got to figure it out. I really liked the classic controller. I liked that. I didn't play with the other one, so I guess I don't really know the difference between the two. But I felt like it was very traditional of a Final Fantasy type, a traditional RPG.
Sure.
I was able to move around pretty easily. I was able to navigate pretty well. I was able to fight okay. Now, you did the New Game Plus.
Yes.
And what exactly... Because I didn't do New Game Plus. I just played it again from scratch. So what was different about the New Game Plus?
The New Game Plus, you have a couple weapons you gain in the original game that have no use until really the next New Game Plus. The enemies, like the regular guys, are the same level. So you walk up to them and you're doing like quadruple digits and stuff. But the bosses are leveled up so that they match your level. I think my initial game I ended at like level 62 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So the bosses were like level 70 and they progressively, I think like the highest one was like 108 or something. And you cannot surpass level 99, by the way.
Right.
But I mean, aside from that, it's really just a matter of playing the game. So you keep your armor and your weapons and all that stuff already. So it's really just kind of, they keep it challenging enough so you have to fight the bosses again, but it's also, you can breeze through a dungeon really quick if you're in it for the gameplay. So like,
or the story.
Yes, the story is there, you're flying through the story, and the bosses still are dramatic, we're fighting, it's a big deal.
That's good.
But yeah, that's...
Did you make it to level 99?
I did make it to level... Everyone did except Lowell, and Lowell would have made it if Lowell did not get passed out, like, near the end of the game. Like, he was like level 97 or 98. He was almost there. Yeah. He was so close. Motion controls. I know that they were really trying to utilize them, but they did not work for this game. And I just thought they were so dumb. There would be, like, climatic scenes where it was... Who's there? Okay. And then you have to like
so by motion controls you're talking about the like little like dot where you got to look around the room.
Yes, that's one of them, yes.
So for me, I don't know about you. You may have been able to use... Did you use the Wii remote to like point or something? No, okay.
You use the nunchuck.
Yeah. So that was the same for me. Just like using the bow and arrow. It was like just that little like eye dot, and you got to move around the room to try and figure out what the heck is going on. So it really is not using
motion controls much at all.
And it was very annoying to have this climax point and like something going on, like, oh, there's something going on, and then you go into this zoom mode and you're like, I don't know what the heck is going on.
You're looking at like the ceiling,
yeah,
the
you're like looking for obvious stuff, and it's like something stupid.
You finally see it, and then it's just, oh, okay.
Yeah, it really pulled away from the game when you had to do that.
It really did. Then there was this was a little bit lower on my list, but it also reminds me, there would be points where there would be a scene, and they're like, alright, well, let's just move on then. And then you would walk 5 steps and then resume to a new scene. Why did you have to walk the additional 5 steps?
I don't know. I know what you mean, though. I also had a problem when they would be in the middle of a dungeon and they're like, let's split up, because that makes sense.
Right? Yeah.
Why? There's no circumstance when splitting up makes any sense. I was annoyed by that.
I had a couple problems with bumping into people. If you bumped into an NPC that you could talk to, the A button disappears while they're staggering to get their balance.
Yeah.
So you gotta wait for them to stagger, stand back up, walk back into their place, and then you could talk to them. I know,
yeah, that was annoying.
But then, if you bumped into your party members when you're out battling, they don't budge. They are in your way.
And you gotta jump over them.
There was at one point on the ship, the Garak ship, that I thought, I'm going to have to restart my game because I cannot get around them.
Yeah, I've had that problem.
That's scary, you know? You need to be able to move these people, and they're in your way. And I realize being able to jump over your characters in battle kind of shows a cool scene or cool action, but they were in my way 90% of the time.
I also had a problem with that jump move, because Zale had that move where he could run up the wall, and there was actually a boss fight, the Kraken. I think that was the Kraken or something like that, where your goal is to run up these like little rock mounds, and it never worked.
You could never move the circle far enough. You had to be in a certain angle.
Or the circle would be going the opposite direction of the guy that you're trying to attack, and it was a mess.
Alternatively, too, though, not alternatively, if you moved your circle towards the enemy you want to like jump and attack, or like to use Gale on, if there is a barrel or a wall or something, even if you are high above it, if it's in your direct path that the character has deemed that it's going to travel, you stop.
I know.
No matter what, even if it's just a tiny rock.
Sometimes I was able to jump through walls to be able to do that, but not very often. Yeah, I don't know. I noticed it, but it wasn't that distracting.
It bothered me a lot.
What bothered me more was, in terms of the fighting style, is there was no command to attack. You just walk up to an enemy to hit them.
See, I was okay with that. You like to hack and slash.
I do, yeah. I like that feeling of, I'm hitting you, where this was just, I'm walking, to attack, I just walk up to this enemy and he automatically attacks, which also got in the way of some of the stuff that I was trying to do, like the Zangrak fight where you got to knock the sword out of his hands.
Oh, that was such a pain in the neck.
You would knock the sword out of his hands, but then you would try and walk around him.
You would have to like
attack him.
Moving.
Yeah, because he would sit and attack Zangrak instead of walking around to get the sword.
Heck, I was flipping over my characters because I could not. It was a mess.
Actually, that fight in general, the only way I was able to beat it was to back myself into a corner with Marania, who was constantly casting Cure, and then Zangrak would come to me and just like hand me the sword, basically.
Oh, I should have done that.
He would like throw the sword at you and then teleport to it, and you could pick up the sword as he teleports and then just sit there and hit him.
Yeah.
And then he would every now and then he would drop the sword, or he would attack you and you would drop the sword, and you would just hit, because you're in this like corner, you could just press A again and you would pick the sword back up and keep attacking him. So that was like the easiest way for me to kill him.
I'm glad you figured it out, because I had the worst time.
I think I died maybe 2 or 3 times on that fight before I figured some way of being able to beat it. And even that, you start off with just Callista and Zale. And so you have to figure out what to do to make the time, to utilize your time until you can open the door again. And yeah, that was a frustrating fight.
One of the other frustrating fights I had, which it wasn't really prevalent in the game, but in this one it was, the first spider fight you have,
On the island?
On the island. This spider cast paralysis on me so many times.
Yep.
And
It wasn't the big spider, it was all the little spiders. All the little spiders would... And if all of your other characters got eaten by the big spider, the one character that is Zale usually, the last character left is like constantly getting attacked by paralysis.
The worst part
and there's nothing you can do about it.
The worst part for me was I think I had to do that like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I think I did twice.
And I did it 3 or 4 times because I would stop like halfway. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna restart. I just would like a fresh start. One of the times I was the last one, and it was spamming with paralysis. And every time you were paralyzed, you could not open the menu. And I wanted to restart my game, so I would be paralyzed, finally get undone, go to hit the menu, and would be paralyzed again. It would do that like 3 or 4 times.
Man, that's annoying.
Something less frustrating but still annoying. The A button action versus hide.
Oh, yeah.
Opening a chest when you're just up against the wall.
The sneak
there was
mission.
No sneaking. Oh, I know, you hated that.
Mission. That was very prevalent.
Was bad.
Because the only way to get from point A to point B is to sneak behind these pillars. Well, every now and then, he would decide to attack the guard instead of sneak behind the next pillar. I have about that mission took me a half hour of retrying and retrying and retrying and retrying. I have a Twitch stream, at least it's over a half hour long, but there's a Twitch stream that starts with that mission that lasts for a half hour of me just working on that mission. And I was so mad by the end of that mission.
I had to have Brandon do it for me.
Did you?
I did.
Oh,
he was very determined, but even he was saying, this is extremely cheap and bad. Like, it was unnecessary for the game. You didn't have to go back through there. You already did the sneak thing with the arrows, sleep arrows. Yeah, it was unnecessary.
It just, it was so I think when I finally did do it, I somehow managed to squeeze through it, and I just happened to make it work.
What's funny is I think at one point Brandon just walked through the door. He just walked, and no one caught him. I don't know if it was just some...
timing was perfect or something, and...
How did you feel about the fast-forwarding through scenes when you hit the A button?
That didn't bother me any.
See, I would accidentally think that the cutscene was just dialogue text, so I would hit A to continue. So I would read ahead, hit A. Well, then it's fast... When you hold A, it fast-forwards, and you don't hear anything. Well, if you hit A, if you don't hold it, it goes at regular pace, but you don't hear any talking until the next sentence or something. And that got annoying. But what really bothered me was some scenes you could legitimately skip with the plus button, but not all of them.
I didn't notice that either. I never even used that. I didn't know it existed. What bothered me more, similar thing, is they would say a single sentence, and then you would have to push A to continue.
Yeah, that was
And it's
annoying.
Really? You can't just keep talking? I can't believe that this was what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so frustrating. So, I don't know. I want to talk about a few things that I did like, and then we'll go back to things that we didn't like.
I only have 2 more.
Alright, go ahead.
Okay.
Continue.
Very small. One of the platform things that I had a problem with was stairs. I would walk to the very corner of the bottom stairs, and it would not let me go up. I would have to stop, walk around the stairs, walk to the front, and go up them. You couldn't just walk up the side. You know what I'm talking about? You would walk to the corner of the very bottom stair. You had to be in front of it legitimately.
You can cut the corner very easily.
And most of them you can, but they're...
And if you got too close to the edge, he would do this stupid walk wiggle thing, and that was annoying because it was slow.
My last one, which is kind of back with the spiders or something, the mystic plants, when you're on the island to figure out where this guardian has gone, they have these plants. And if my guys, because
you're talking about the vines, the tentacle vines.
Because my guys were higher level, when I walked up to them and hit them, they would die immediately. Well, when I walked up to them, they would proceed their attack So they would grab hold of my guy after I've hit them and killed them, wave me about. I would have to use the analog to stop the attack. They would throw me down, damage me, and then die. I have already killed them before they've attacked me, but because they've already thought, well, I'm going to grab him, they did this so many times. Wow. It was driving me crazy.
I was just shooting them with arrows, and they were dying really fast with the arrows.
Well, I was spamming the red circles where you could, call more stronger enemies to level up.
Yeah.
And, so after doing it for like the 50th time, I just ran up to hit him because I was one-hitting all everyone. So I thought with that same logic, well, no, these guys had something else in mind.
Alright, well, a couple good things that I wanted to talk about, and then I have a couple more bad things that I want to talk about for gameplay. The leveling up system was pretty easy.
Yes.
It went really smooth. There wasn't any like grinding that I felt like I needed to do.
Right.
There was a couple points where it was like, hey, there's a summon circle here. I'll call a couple of guys until I stop leveling up with one fight. Because you get the bonus when you do the summon circles. Yeah. So
I liked the summon circles.
There was definitely a couple times like towards the end where literally the monsters were super easy, and you would level up every single time.
I have to say, it was super easy getting to level 99.
So I would like spam that until I would stop leveling up with one round of enemies, and once all of my characters stopped leveling up, then I just was like, well, I guess I'm done. And I didn't ever feel like I was underleveled. There was a few boss fights that were frustrating, but not for leveling reasons. Usually boss fights that were frustrating because the puzzle mechanics of the boss was wrong.
Yeah.
And that happened a lot. There was a lot of boss fights where, like the Rolly boss in the sewer, where you had to hit him just right so he would bounce around, and then you'd have to hit him again, or I don't know. There was a handful of bosses where there was a puzzle to it.
Right.
And sometimes that puzzle didn't work well. The equipment system was different in this game, where you didn't really get a whole lot of equipment, weapons, armor, all that.
You just would
upgrade them instead.
I wonder if that has to do, though, with wanting to appease someone who, well, I like the way these pants look on so-and-so.
Probably, but
because there was a variety, but not a whole lot of variety.
Yeah, and I saw that. I did like that when you changed equipment, like we talked about before, it would change your clothes, but also your swords. That was kind of neat. Sometimes you would get a weapon that just looked awesome, so you felt cool using them.
Did you ever use any of Callista's clothing articles? Because you got to use her gown and her her blue outfit. No. I had Marani equipped with her ball gown almost the entire time.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Did it give you better stat boosts or something?
I don't know. I think it might have. I mean, I really did not focus much on the other characters because I was really fine by myself.
Yeah.
But Mariah, honestly, she was my toughest one that stuck it out the most. The people who died the most was Dagrin and Seren. Seren died almost 90% of the time. She was so useful.
Well, mainly because she was so aggressive with her fighting style.
Yeah, and that really made the difference.
And so, you get those bosses that would hit when you get close.
Yeah, and she
would be the first one knocked out because she had no defense. So another thing, I put it on my good list, and I'm not quite sure why. Magic was purely strategic. It didn't look cool. The effects weren't really that good. And really the only time you had to use it was when you had those wall guys or the boss fights where they had a barrier around them where you had to use a special color magic to be able to defeat the barrier. That was the only time that I really used the magic.
I hated when you would have to use a mage. You only had to do it once or twice, but I hated it. And I think part of it is I have a hard time using those controls with the analog sticks. In fact, I play with inverted controls anyway.
Yeah, me too.
But there was certain times where I wish my controls weren't inverted. It just didn't work very well. So it was very frustrating. But I did not like using the mages at all. And the wait time was, I got it, but it was just like, really?
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. And yeah, you didn't have to do that very often, but there was a couple missions where you had to take control of like Yurik or somebody.
Yeah.
The very end was kind of weird, where you had to take control of the individual characters.
Yeah,
like you had
that was weird.
Your team split off into different ways, but then you still had to do the story in each team's, I did
like, though, which, not that you were fighting with her, but I liked when you got to use Callista, like, firing the arrows. I don't know, I just kind of like the idea of controlling a different character. Or what I think is funny, too, is in the very beginning of the game, you don't control Zale, your main character. You control Dagran in the very, very beginning, which is
and then you never
funny.
get to do it again.
Also, when I went into my game to look at my counter, and I accidentally triggered the next New Game Plus, and Zale has the ability to use the Outsider.
In New Game Plus?
In the New Game Plus.
That's weird.
It is weird, and I think it might be because he's technically supposed to have Zale's abilities, but he has the Outsider, and it's red. It is very strange.
Zale or Dagran can use the Outsider.
Yes. Just in the very first part when you're controlling him.
That's weird.
And I don't know if it's just New Game Plus, if it's just a nod to the game, I don't know, but yeah.
That's bizarre.
And Zale can use it too, though.
Yeah, well...
But you're not supposed to until you
don't technically have the Outsider.
Which is why I wonder if they're just taking Zale's abilities with Dagran's just layout.
Yeah, but that's still weird because you can use Lol later in the game and he can't do that.
I have no idea.
Or like when you can use Seren, you can use Seren later in the game and she can't do that kind of stuff. That's weird. Last thing that I wanted to talk about for gameplay, at least that I have notes for, and this was an afterthought. It wasn't until you were talking about the story that I wanted to talk about this. This like small scene that I thought was gonna never end, where you're thrown into the water and you have to find the boat. You know what I'm talking about? And it was like there's no clear instruction on what you're supposed to do.
That was pretty bad.
There's no like direction that you're supposed to be going. You just kind of keep going and keep floating and keep floating.
Like if you go the wrong direction, they don't tell you. Like you catch on. Like I'm going in the wrong direction. But you don't catch on until after you've been going in the wrong direction.
It's so... it was
bad.
Very frustrating, and I didn't understand where I was going, why they even had me doing this. Why isn't it just a cutscene where you fall in the water and then you get picked up by the boat? Why didn't the narrator just say, and then he got picked up by a boat?
Where was the narrator then?
I know! Dang it, narrator. Oh, man. But yeah, that was super annoying.
Something interesting that I also remembered, not that it's that big, I booted up my game, and I accidentally triggered a New Game Plus. So I loaded up a different file that I had saved, knowing that that file would do the New Game Plus. And I was in a dungeon, and I tried to escape, and I couldn't. Well, I loaded my last checkpoint, which loaded my other game at the very beginning. It was weird.
That is weird.
I don't know. And it had my counter for the other game, so I knew it was a completely different game, but it loaded the other game completely. It was weird.
Huh.
Just interesting.
It's like it got confused or something on what it was doing.
I mean, it loaded the last checkpoint, so...
Alright, so do you feel good about moving on?
I think so. I think I've let out enough steam over gameplay. I mean, gameplay, again... It was doable. I didn't mind running around. After I got used to it, it was fine. But there was so many little things that just drove me crazy.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that drove me crazy too. We didn't even talk about the tutorial system, which was awful.
Yeah, that was lazy.
I mean, there was no...
It was just pretty, that was it.
There was so many things that I didn't know how to do because either the tutorial was hidden or it flashed for a second, or it was confusing tutorial, or I don't know.
They do kind of show you your actual character doing it, but they had like drawings.
Yeah.
I don't.
And the buttons didn't even match my controller.
I could. Oh yeah.
So that was another annoying thing. I had to figure out what controller buttons they were trying to talk about.
I could be wrong, but I don't think I even got the tutorial for New Game Plus, and it'd been a long time since I had
And
played.
that's what I was worried about by doing New Game Plus, because I didn't remember anything.
I had to go through my tutorials and learn some of the buttons. So when I had come in on one of your streams, you weren't doing stuff, and I was like, "How did he make it this far? I don't know how you did that spider boss.
Pure luck.
It literally had to have been.
It really was. A lot of the boss fights up until that point was pure luck. Like
you weren't diffusing circles.
I didn't know how.
You were not using revive. You were not instructing. Like at one point, there was a lot of stuff that was like, how did he make it this far? I got off the stream, I walked up to my husband and was like, I don't know how Danny did it. I would have been so frustrated by that point that I don't know if I would have finished the game.
For the most part, it wasn't too bad. The boss fights were very difficult by not knowing what the heck I was doing. But
and explaining Gale and stuff to you, it was so funny.
Well, I knew that Gale could do that kind of stuff. I just didn't understand that there was... I don't know. I didn't understand that move was the same as what I was doing. I don't know.
I remember not even wanting to say anything because I didn't want to be that person in the stream, but it was like, I don't think he knows. And finally you're like, I think I'm missing a main point.
Yeah, totally.
Like, yes, you are. I knew immediately what the problem was right after that.
Yeah. It was like...
I almost called you.
I remember the tutorials, and I remember the tutorials talking about being able to do certain things, but I didn't really put the correlation between how the tutorials were telling me to do it and how it related to my current battle situation.
I do remember in my last game having to go back through the tutorials because they just don't explain it very well.
When I played the first time, I feel like it was seamless.
Oh, really?
And the way I remember my first gameplay, it was easy. The boss fights were super easy. I don't know what I did the first gameplay, but I felt like I plowed through the game without any problems. And this time I was struggling all over the place because I had, the internet watching me. So anyway, let's move on to music. Yay! The highlight of this game.
What'd you give it?
I gave it an 11 out of 10.
Oh, that's right. Shame on you.
No.
Shame on you.
Nope, it deserves it. Oh, man. The music was the best. It was the best.
I agree. I gave it a 9 out of 10. And the only reason why I didn't give it a perfect score is just for the simple fact that after a while it got repetitive. And I hated the castle music. It was just like,
It just didn't bother me. I don't know.
It was almost too happy at times. It was just like, ugh.
I never had that problem. I just didn't.
9 out of 10.
Well, I gave it an 11, so it compensates for your 9. The music in general was really good, I thought.
It was really good.
I really liked the theme song. It was overused, I think.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. It gave the game kind of a ethereal kind of feel to it. It made, I don't know. I didn't like when they sang the song.
Yeah,
I liked hearing it in the background. I liked booting up the game and hearing that song when you booted up the game. It really put you into that feel of this game. There was a couple boss fights that were awesome. The red guy.
The red guy? You're talking about Zangarak?
No, the guy before Zangarak. The red... He was like one of the
twins.
One of the twin mages. Yeah, he was the red one.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And his boss music was really awesome. Good. His boss music was better than the final boss. And the final boss was kind of cool, but I kind of felt the repetitive on that.
Yeah.
On that one. Maybe because the boss fight's so long. But, man, the boss fight with the red guy was awesome.
Yeah.
I felt cool, even though the boss fight was kind of difficult.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
That is
I felt really
important.
cool.
When you feel cool, that's how you know.
That's how you know that they're doing what they're doing right. You know.
I know this isn't music, but I thought the bugs and birds and sound effects were really good.
I wrote that into the ambient sounds were really cool. There were times that I was in like the castle or like the town, and I could hear stuff in the background, and I'm like, is that like somebody behind me or like somebody watching TV or something? I would take my headphones off, and I'm like, there's no way that I could hear a television upstairs on the second floor with my headphones in. So I put my headphones back in, and I can hear it again. I'm like, it's just the way that they build the sounds in this game. It's so cool. You know, they had parts where the castle was destroyed yet again, and you know, you could hear people working in the background and clinking on the stone, and it was so cool. The voice acting was really good.
Yes, I agree.
There were a few times that it was kind of cheesy, but I think that it being a JRPG, it's just kind of cheesy sometimes. But otherwise, the voice acting was really well done.
It really added to the characters.
It really did, and it kind of brought you to that different world, at least for us Americans. I mean, just because they had that accent to them, it just, I don't know, it kind of...
all of them were.
It
wasn't just, like, a couple of them were. Like,
right,
were.
that's just how the setting was. And it just kind of put you in that place, you know, of this game. It took you out of, for us anyway, to take you out of the real world a little bit more and bring you into this different place. Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things about the music and the sounds and I mean, it wasn't just Nobu. It was the whole sound team really went above and beyond, and which is why I gave it the 11. Which when I put the 10 and I'm like, it just doesn't, it's just not quite. Enough. Just not quite there. So, moving on to our overall thoughts, I gave it a 7 out of 10 for overall.
I gave it an 8.
Wow.
I really liked this. You know, the gameplay, a lot of it was just little stuff. There were a couple big things, but I mean, overall, it just worked really, really well with me. Very few times was I stumped.
Agreed. I struggled a lot in the beginning, especially before we had our conversation. But other than that, it was mainly the reason why I gave it a poor score is I just wasn't as into it as I was the first time through.
I definitely agree with that.
And I think that that's really all it was. Is I wasn't super invested in it, and it may have just been because I've played it once before.
Right.
And I mean, in theory, that should be the same problem with all the Final Fantasy games, because I've already played all the Final Fantasy games before. Maybe because I have a special place in my heart for Final Fantasy games, I can just play them again without any problems. I don't know. We'll find out.
I don't know. But my only thing about that is I feel like if we're going to compare to Final Fantasies, this has a lot of repetitive features, like the constant attacks on Lazarus from the Gurak and all that stuff. Like, you don't really have that with And, which I really should have brought up over previously too, is you're really stuck with the same maps and stuff. You don't really get to travel a whole lot. Like, it's pretty linear as far as like travel and all that.
Yeah, and something else that we didn't talk about that I forgot to say. When you redo dungeons, you don't get experience for it.
No, but you get special items.
So? If I'm going to play a dungeon all the way through, I want the full benefits of that dungeon. I don't want to just go through for the special items.
But then you also remember, it's easy to level up, and they have those circles.
Agreed. But if I'm going to waste my time going through a dungeon over again, I want something more than just items. But I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that I probably could have gotten if I had played some of those dungeons. I didn't get any of the specialty like colors. They had like
you couldn't get them though. You have to do the multiplayer deathmatch, and they canceled that. Like you can't play it anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, you didn't get... And I have looked on YouTube, I haven't tried too hard, but I have not been able to find anything like showing examples of what the specialty dyes were. I think they're just like effects like sparkles or something, but...
Did you get anything like the... Because I was able to get the invisible top, but did you get like the invisible bottoms?
I did, yes.
Oh.
My characters could walk around in their underwear.
Nice. I thought it was really funny when they would all run to the door and you still had to open the door. So a lot of times I would be like running through a dungeon and be like, I will get the door, sir. every place that I got up to, I'm like, don't worry about it, I will get the door.
Which is funny because Dagrin is technically your leader.
I know.
Don't worry, sir. I'll get a daggy waggy. So, do you have your game time?
Oh, no, I don't have it here. I did write it down, but I don't have it in front of me. It was like 23 something.
Oh, I see. Well, my New Game Plus only time was like 29 hours, I think. But I think combined with my previous game and this, because it's continues off of your time, I think it was like 62 hours total. So, I mean, I spent a good, between the two, it's like even with the New Game Plus, it's like a good 30 hours.
Right, yeah. Okay, hang on, I'll check. Hang on. I put in 23 hours and 11 minutes. So that actually beat my last gameplay by a couple hours, which was 27 hours. So... yeah, not too bad.
I beat mine only by 3 hours.
Well, mine was only by 4. And however, mine wasn't New Game Plus. Both times I played it straight through for the as a normal game.
Truthfully, with my New Game Plus, my first one was 33 hours and this was 29. Like with New Game Plus, I was at level 99, so I mean, you really are just playing the game again. Like it's a tiny bit easier, but it's also a tiny bit more difficult. Yeah. So
was your final boss any harder because of the New Game Plus?
It was about the same.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it really was the same. It took me a good 3 hours to beat between Zangarak and Dagrin.
Right. I have to say the Dagrin fight wasn't too bad. I remember the first time through it was really
bad,
hard.
I remember.
But there's a few things that you can kind of exploit that helps the game out, or that helps that final fight through. One thing is that your super moves regenerate super fast for some reason.
And that boss battle
so
especially.
You're able to like Mirania's extra life thing.
I had a lot of
you could do that over and over and over and over again, and you could just keep dying. But I was also able to find a way to stay in a heal circle and go out and attack and come back to the heal circle pretty quick.
For me, I had the benefit of I had a really good weapon, and every time I attacked, I had like an 80% chance of recovering. And so every time I attacked, basically, I was recovering HP.
Oh, that's
on
nice.
A lot of
Was it a blood sword?
No, it was... When I had Googled at one point, like, the strongest weapons to have, I think you can get Zangarak's weapon, by the way. If you beat him with his weapon, like the final blow.
Yeah, I was able to get it.
But one of the, like, top 3 I had, and it started with, like, a T, but it would regenerate your HP, and that's why it was so good. So I, of course, upped it with all my particles I had, and I mean, it really helped.
Yeah, I was surprised that it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I kind of went into it expecting to be in for a long fight.
It really was. Well, it was just time consuming. Yeah. The hardest battle for me was getting Zangarak. I just had such a hard time attacking him because, well, funny story. I had an invisible sword and I wanted to see what it looked like. I forgot I equipped it. And so when I did this battle, at the end of this long period of time I was playing my game, I was fighting him with this, like, dinky weapon. So it was taking forever. So when I replayed and re-equipped everything, it was a lot better.
Yeah.
But attacking him, it still took a long time pulling down that HP and stuff.
I had that strategy that I used for the Zangarak fight.
I wish I had done that.
I backed myself in the corner, but I also strategically waited to open the door for the other characters until later. Because when you first go into that fight, he has the barrier on him.
Right.
Well, when you have more characters in the arena, he will target more than one character.
Right.
So if you're going into it with only Zale and Callista, he's more likely to target Zale when he throws his weapon at him. So you have more of a chance to get his weapon.
That really does.
To attack the barrier. And the barrier is so tough, and it only goes down with his weapon.
Yeah.
So my strategy was going in, I'm just going to attack him until his barrier goes down, and then I'll open the door. So then once I open the door, I back myself in that little door cove and just waited for, Mirania to heal me.
On top of that, too, for me, I had a lot of problems with my characters being in my way. Like, even when I'm trying to grab his weapon, I'll run, and he'll be rolling over Seren or something.
Right, yeah. So, and I had that problem, too, and that, again, backing myself in that corner made it super easy.
Well, I should have just called you up, apparently.
I was prepared.
Yeah, I can tell.
I was prepared to call you up and say, hey,
by the way,
if you wanted to bring the game over, but when we do the podcast episode, and I'll help you beat the final boss or whatever. But no, I'm glad that you were able to beat it.
Get it.
It worked out well. So for overall, I think I already said I gave it a 7.
I gave it an 8 out of 10.
I enjoyed the game. Yeah. I just think that, again, I wasn't super invested in it this time around. I think
I wonder if this would be different scores if we'd done it for the first time.
It totally would have been. However, I think this time around, I liked the story a lot more than I did the first time. I think I invested myself a little more in the story than I did last time. Last time I was more focused on the gameplay and trying to get through it. Than, this time it was very focused on the story, which made the cutting off the dialogue that much more frustrating. But yeah, 7 out of 10, not bad. So my final score total is a 40 out of 50.
Mine was a 34 out of 50.
And that gave us a 74 out of 100, so that falls into a beautiful C range.
I feel like it deserved a B, but oh well. Again, if the gameplay was not so bad, because I would have been a lot lower. I think the gameplay really is its worst downfall.
It really is. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of those little things are small and frustrating, and they don't seem like a big deal, but when you start adding them up, it really turns into a bigger problem than what it should have been. And I think that was its biggest downfall. I think if I were to play this game, if I were to have scored this game the first time through, it would have been significantly higher, because I specifically remember, now I don't remember much of the game, but I remember how I felt when I played that game, and I loved it the first time through, and I was so excited for it. I still would like to see a sequel. I think it would be fun, or an HD remake would be really cool, but the first time through, I think I would have given this easy an A or a B, way huge score, because I loved the game. But the second time through, a little more meticulous on what I was paying attention to, and a little bit more trouble on the gameplay, and I think that's what brought the score down. Yeah,
and truthfully, I feel like it's like I keep even thinking about more stuff to even talk about. But on the other hand, that's a good thing, because the game, there's a lot to the game.
Yeah, there really is. And there's a few things in there that we didn't talk about. Story-wise, there's a few things in there that we may have missed even.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot more to explore in this game than just what we touched on. But, it really is a good game. I would suggest playing it if you haven't. If you haven't played it, I'm really sorry that we just spoiled the whole game for you.
With the worst way possible.
I know. Surprise! Dagran's the bad guy. I think you kind of see it coming when he disappears.
I didn't see it coming the first time.
I sure did.
After knowing that, you going through and playing again, you're like, oh my gosh, where is Dagran?
I know. And during the stream, I was joking too. Like, as soon as he was gone, I'm like, where's Dagran? Where's Dagran? Like, still no Dagran. And what's weird is nobody questions it.
I know.
And it's like, he's a key player, and nobody else even wonders.
There were times where there was just party members that didn't partake in some of the... But he was the leader, so it is important.
It was weird.
Daggy's gone.
So that's...
Good game.
That's about it for Last Story. Let's talk about our thrift shop game before we end. Today we played Endless Ocean.
It was endless,
I picked this up at a thrift shop. I don't know how much it was because I took the sticker off, and I don't know where my price tag went, but I'm sure it wasn't more than $4. I really was expecting more out of this game. The cover really makes it feel like it's this
endless sea
awesome exploration
fish.
Game.
It was not.
No, it wasn't. It really kind of sucked, which is unfortunate because I really wanted this game to be fun. It looked really
He had high expectations for a game that came out 10 years ago.
Yeah, and it seriously was. 2008 was the copyright on it. And yeah, it's feeling its age. I think Wii games really just don't hold that much value.
No.
Which is too bad because, I don't know, I feel like the Wii was kind of revolutionary for what they were trying to achieve. But you go back to graphics, and graphics just weren't there.
Look
and
at
this
the
game
game we
definitely
just
was
played.
it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even Last Story, the graphics weren't quite there.
Last Story, I mean... 2012, which technically was 2011, so we're coming up close on 10 years itself, too.
Yeah, that's true. But Endless Ocean really is like a diving game, but there's like this weird like story behind.
I think it's just so that you progressively do more for it. Like, it's supposed to be a progression, and so they give you story. It wasn't much of a story, though.
It was stupid.
It was really
like, all I want to do is roam around the ocean. And yet they're like, no, you can't go in this area. No, you can't go in this area.
This with this special feature first.
Oh, that was annoying.
There wasn't very many fish.
There wasn't, and you kept seeing the same fish over and over again.
The controls are pretty bad.
They weren't awful, but
I don't know.
Great.
I was poking a fish and it wouldn't let me pet him.
I think my problem with the controls was that the motion for the Wii remote was super touchy, so when you're trying to hit the OK button, it's like flying across the screen. But yeah, I mean, not a super fun game.
No,
I don't suggest it. If you want to check out our gameplay of Endless Ocean for the Wii, you can check it out at our website, zapnight.com, where you can find links to our YouTube channel where we have everything hosted. I actually have been pushing all of our podcast episodes to our YouTube page too. So if you guys are interested in checking this out on our YouTube page, if you're listening to us on YouTube, thank you for listening. Hi. Subscribe. That would be awesome. You can check out everything that we've got going on at zapnight.com. Next month, this month, we're going to be playing
Mario Maker.
Mario Maker, right. So you can look forward to that. That should be coming out November 1st, or no. I got my months all messed up.
January?
Just pick a month. December 1st. So, yeah, you guys can look forward to that. We are planning on playing some Final Fantasy. I don't know. Right now we're looking at a February review day. So maybe February 1st. Maybe earlier, maybe later, depending on how that goes. But I am planning on streaming it, so you can check out our website and see when we're going to be streaming. You can check out our Facebook. I try to post on when I'm going to be streaming my games, so check us out there. Follow us on Facebook if you want to get alerts and all that good stuff. So, yeah, thanks for coming back, Kaylie. I'm excited to see you some more.
Yeah,
play some more games.
It's fun to finally be able to play games.
I know. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.